Recording now, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the listening information. Sure, it's working.
There's nothing in here. What do you
Come on.
You want my phone? Just watch a movie?
Sure.
Do, 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 do.
I didn't finish watching.
There we go. All right. So before I jump into listening, before I share the screen with you, talk to me about how you are as listeners. All right. How are you as listeners? Do you consider yourselves good listeners? Do you consider yourselves bad listeners? How do you feel about yourself as a listener? Amanda's like, eh. What do you think? Who wants to go first? Yeah, Elise.
I'm a so-so listener because what I tend to do is I listen, and I see that about myself. So I've been lately trying to stop doing it. I tend to not let people finish and I jump in.
Gotcha. All right.
I think
I'm a so-so.
You're gonna
I'm a
release
good
you
listener
done?
until I'm not interested in what you're talking about. I'm trying to be better at that because, everybody has something good to say, I guess. But I find myself being a better listener. One, if I'm interested. Two, if I'm really trying to understand. Lately I've been observing about myself, and that I need to understand things. Everybody has their own opinions, everybody has their own outlooks on things, but when I don't understand something, it frustrates me. Like if I don't understand somebody's way of thinking, and I'm just like, how did you come up with that? Like it frustrates me. And then it's like, now I'm intently listening because I want to know how your brain came up with this idea. But if I'm not interested, I many of times my family knows that when they're talking to me, if they don't say my name, I completely block them out. So it's like, oh, we could be in a crowd of people. And then they're like, Christina, I'm talking to you. I'm like, oh, what did you say? Whatever.
Awesome. I'm laughing because that you basically just described me. It's selective. And sometimes I pretend that I didn't hear you and I don't hear so well, mostly with my husband. But I generally have so much else going on. And when we talked about noise a few weeks ago, when we talked about noise in communication, remember, noise can be like dogs barking and lawnmowers and babies screaming, but noise can also be that mental load. And I really think, and I feel comfortable saying this to a class of women, but I really think that a lot of times noise that affects us is, oh God, what are we going to do for dinner? And I need to clean this. And I've got 4 loads of laundry I need to fold. And I've got work I need to do. And I have to write a draft for, yeah, right, Courtney? I have to write another stupid 40-page draft for Tuesday. And why am I doing this bagel? Stupid stuff like that. And that's the kind of noise that interrupts communication. And so with all that going on, I'm not listening to what's being said to me because there's just so much. So I don't know. Who else? What other kind of, anyone a good listener?
I
thought that was good. I thought that was a good listener.
I think
Okay, I was about to say the same thing. I thought I was a good listener.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I know I personally tend to piss people off sometimes, especially my husband, because I'm not listening. He's talking and I'm not listening. He's also a talker, so anyhow, Courtney, go ahead.
I think a few years ago, I wasn't the best listener, especially in an argument.
Mhm.
I would just
Noise.
Yeah, and I would be listening to respond, not listening to hear what they're actually saying to me.
Sure.
I would just be like, oh, well, you said this, but this is what I have to say about this. Why aren't you listening to me? And now I feel, I'm still working on that part, but I feel that now I genuinely listen to people more.
Mhm.
And I actively try to listen to people more, even when it's stuff I don't want to talk about. I agree with you, Christina. It's very hard when it's not something that I'm a real big fan of. So I'm just like, I'm trying really, really hard, especially when I care so much about that person who's talking about it. So like I'm trying super, super
Yeah.
hard. But I definitely think since like my diagnosis and stuff, I definitely tend to want to be a better listener, but I also
Mhm.
want to have that deeper relationship with people. So
Mhm.
it's not regretted later,
Sure.
you know?
Absolutely.
I think it's when I decide that I already know what they're gonna say when I stop listening. Like, when I've already decided that I'm either right or what you're gonna say is total BS. So I'm just not gonna listen.
That is
think
a very
Courtney-
honest answer.
I think
Yes.
Courtney hit it for me. I listen to respond, not to listen and take in what you're saying.
Mhm.
Because you could just, I listen and you could just say that just one little thing, and then I'll jump on you and I'll respond and not let you finish with what you were, which I've seen, which I try to work on. But yeah, that's kind of, I still do it every
Sure.
now and then.
Sure. No, it's interesting. I mean, you think about communication, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, well, listening's a key part of it. But it really is. It's really something that is a huge part of communication. So, as we're talking about it this week, this is how we are going to get better at communicating, is how well we listen. And it's, I think something that we haven't said that we've said it is it's hard. It's hard. It's not necessarily something that we're good at. It's not necessarily something that we want to do. And sometimes it's just a really challenging thing to do. I am trying to expand this and it does not want to expand. If I hit present live, is this going to work? Nope, that's not going to work. I don't know why these don't want to present anymore. All right, bear with me just a second. And we're just going to do this. Can everyone see it okay?
Mhm.
All right. Like I said, I wanted to, whoops. Just does not want to let me. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so listening, mouthing the words. First things first. I love this kid. He is hysterical. There was a questionnaire in the book, and quite honestly, I did not email it out to you guys in time, so I will send it to you after class tonight so that you can try it and take a look at it. But it's really to identify what kind of a listener you are. And I think a lot of us, we're on the right page. We already know what kind of listener we are. This just tends to add some more, specific details to it. So when we listen, there are 4 different types of listening. The questionnaire will tell you if you're people focused, action focused, content focused, or time focused. Any thoughts on what you might be? I know you don't necessarily know what each of those are, but the words themselves are pretty self-explanatory. So anyone think that they're a people listener? Those are going to be those people who you listen because you love people and you want to hear them and you want to communicate with them. Your social butterflies, if you will. Courtney, you said maybe. Okay. The second one is action focused listening. And Christina, I'm going to guess that this is you to some extent. Essentially, because I know this is me as well. Essentially, these are people who, as they're listening, they ask the question, whether, internally or not, okay, what are we doing with this information? What's happening with this information? Why are you telling me this? Do I need to know this? And if I need to know this, why do I need to know it? How can I use this?
I would say it's between the action and the content.
Yeah. Content is more like knowledge base. You're listening because you want to understand something. Like sitting in a class, people who like sitting and listening. Maybe someone who likes like a book on tape. Hate those personally, but they're listening because they're trying to absorb that material. And then the last one is time focused listening. And these are people who listen but only for a short amount of time because there's other stuff that they want to think about and they want to get to.
All right,
So,
I
don't know.
switch. I'm going from action to time, action and time.
I'm in between those two myself. It's definitely, I don't know, is this me or not? I'm usually pretty fairly distributed between the two. Do these sound like anyone else though? Yeah, Courtney, what do you think? Oh,
I'm definitely a action and content, because I like to know where this conversation is going, and not necessarily most of the time like what it has to do with me, but like what are you getting at? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then I'm a why person.
Mm-hmm.
And it drives me nuts when my children do it, but I know why they do it because they got it from me.
Yeah.
But I'm a very, when somebody says, like when I was in chemistry and it's moles is 1 point or like times 10 to the whatever it was, I
10.6.
forgot. Yeah. Why? Well, that's just the way it is. That's how they figured it out. But how'd they get to that? And I'd go off on a tangent because I want to know why this was that point, and then we can move on. Like, it's so bad sometimes. And they're just like that. Well, that's just the way it is. But how? You know what I mean?
That's fair.
But it can be super frustrating, not only to others but myself, because when they can't give me the satisfied answer that I'm looking for, it's really frustrating to me.
And I'm going to be honest, this is a very gross generalization, but what I have noticed over the years working at Goodwin, talking to students, a lot of students really seem to all be, they seem to be like very driven, very focused. I know what I want. I know what I'm trying to accomplish. And I see that time and time again, semester after semester. So I would guess, you know, as you take this questionnaire, that you're going to be more action focused. You're probably going to be a little bit more content focused. People is important, but it might not be like your first choice, or it might not be your strength, because here you are in a stage of life where you need to be focused on getting the material, learning the material, understanding, you know, the chemistry and so forth. Big thing though to take away, listening versus hearing. All right. We are talking exclusively tonight about listening, and listening is active. It's something that you actively do and you try to do, and it takes effort. It takes concentration. Think about an instance where you sat down and you talked to someone for a long period of time, and it was a good conversation, but you were just like tired afterwards, right? That's that active listening, because you are actually putting in effort. You know, you are straining yourself when you are listening to someone, versus hearing. Okay, so I'm in the car this afternoon. My daughter likes to just tell me things, and she was going on and on and on about, for 10 minutes, just blah, 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 blah. And I was going, okay. And then finally I'm like, what the hell is she saying to me? And I listened actively for a minute and realized she was trying to explain to me what ball base was. And I'm like, ball base, what is ball? I figured out she meant baseball. So she's trying to explain to me, you run and you hit a ball and all those things. But I was just hearing her. I was hearing the babble. I wasn't actually focused on it. All right, let's look at different types of listening. A couple different types to focus on. First one is dialogic listening. And this is listening when you're engaging with your partner, when you're engaging with someone who you're talking to, and you're trying to understand and create meaning together. I try to do this in class, where I ask you to jump in and to answer questions and to give me your feedback. I try to do this in class a lot. Not easy to do. This is more the kind of listening where, you know, you're having a conversation with a friend, or you're, you know, with a loved one, and you're really having that dialogue, and you see that word right in it. Okay. Next kind of listening is empathic listening. And I'm just going to say it right here. I am horrible at this. I am so bad at this. I see a couple of you pointing at yourselves. Empathic listening.
So bad.
Right. Again,
See, that I'm not bad at. I'm
No?
I'm very no, I'm like certain emotions, certain things that people are
Mhm.
feeling when they are speaking, I sometimes feel that, and the response becomes more empathic and more
Yeah.
sensitive. See, I'm like that, but
So here's,
like Christina was saying, there's a point in time, it's like, yeah, no, I lose interest. Or you would hit something and I would be like, well, no, like, why not this? Instead of letting them finish. So yeah, my listening skills is all over the place.
sure, I'm bad at this. I really truly am. And the bad part is my husband like thrives on this kind of listening. And he just, talks and tells me, and he says the same thing over and over again. And he just wants me to listen and understand, engage. And in my mind, I'm like, well, you told me once, I know now. I get it. You don't need to tell me 16 more times. So this is that listening where you're trying to understand human services people, or at least I'm looking at you like you need this skill. This is a good skill to have. Nursing people, you're probably not going to use this skill as much as you think you are. You want to help people, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, you're probably not going to use the skill as much as you need to.
I don't agree. Nursing, they need to be empathic. They need that skill. Some nursing people, I
I was
feel
gonna say I'm on the fence with that because I feel like me going into a nurse,
Mhm.
like I want that position, but like I don't know how to explain myself right now, but
Yeah, argue
like
it. I want to hear it.
like I have empathy, like I understand
Mhm.
and I have sympathy also, but I also have like that kick in the ass attitude, like, okay, I've had my 5 minutes. Like if I get super overwhelmed, give me 5 minutes, I'm gonna go cry, I'm gonna be right back, and I'm gonna kick some ass. So, but that's just who I am. But I feel with other people at the same time, like I can understand the view from a mom. I can understand the view from you ate it, you goofball. And so she's asking where her snowflake roll is. She ate it. So, but I can see that and understand from different perspectives too. Like that's why I want to go into oncology, because I know what they're doing. I know what they're going through. I know what it's like to shave your head, and you love your hair so much. I know what that means. You know what I mean? So it's like I can empathize with that and stuff like that. But like if it's an ER and like my stomach hurts and stuff, I'm just like, okay.
you're just like, suck it up. Like
Yes,
certain
it's a bellyache.
situation,
I get it.
exactly. Certain
Yes.
situation, I feel like
It's
when
so
you're a
bad.
nurse, you need to have that empathy, that sympathy.
Yeah.
A certain situation is like, man, suck it up, go home, do this, and call it a day. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Like I twisted my ankle. Yeah, and I was in labor signing papers to buy my house. What's up?
So I haven't said this yet tonight, but communications is contextual.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was sick a few weeks ago and he was like, oh, I'm dying. This is the worst thing ever. I'm like, I went through childbirth without medication. I don't want to hear it, Shut up. That sort of thing. So yeah,
so
you're absolutely right.
my daughter hurt her knee playing basketball over this weekend. So as she was playing, she got hurt, the knee got swollen. And for me, I'm a mom. I'm supposed to be empathetic. I'm supposed to be sensitive. Like, how's your knee? Is the knee okay? But at the same time, so this is what I was thinking. At the same time, I was worried about the team. And I'm like, if you wrap it, will you be okay to play? Because they needed her. But then I'm looking at her face and I'm like, she could handle pain. If she chose not to play, that means that the pain was beyond what she was able to handle, and you need to back off and not try to force her to go play by telling her, listen, how about if you wrap it? Would it still be the same? Giving her ibuprofen. So at that point, even though the mom in me wanted to play, would continue playing with the team, there's that mom in me that was like, yeah, no, she must be hurting to the point where she doesn't feel that she needed to go back. I needed to back off. So yeah, that's perfect. Like that was the example. And I'm like, and I wanted her to like suck it up and play, but then I realized like, yeah, no,
And that's
she's
the
good.
active part. You're actually listening and thinking, thinking about it. My daughter's got this new thing. If she doesn't want to do anything, she'll just like walk into a wall and go, "Oh, I bumped my elbow. I can't do it." I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. So we looked at dialogic listening. We looked at empathic listening. This picture is a little bit old, but let's think about analytic listening. Last fall and the election season was just a perfect time to really think about listening and analyzing and paying attention to, what's going on. And this is just the perfect example. It doesn't matter what side you're on, doesn't matter which candidate you backed, but the fact that, and if you ever watched those debates last fall, those were something else. Those were an adventure. Those were an example where people wanted so badly to listen and analyze and hear what these candidates had to say. And if you remember that first debate where they were arguing back and forth and screaming at each other.
That was a disaster.
Oh my God. It was like, from a communications person point of view, it was amazing. Like, it was so awesome. But from the history point of view, it was like, oh crap, we're all going to die. Right. But that's that analytical listening, when you're actually trying to listen and hear a message and to make a decision about something. Again, doesn't matter who you sided with, but it's the fact that you have to really pay attention, because something big, something major is weighing on this decision or this listening. Oh, that's an old picture. So yeah, those are the four major types. All right. I'm sorry, three major types: dialogic, empathic, and analytic listening. And if you think about where you are throughout your day, what kind of situations you're in, you're going to use all of these different types of listening in different situations. All right. So let me ask you, if we go back to dialogic listening for a second, when would you say in your day today, when did you use this kind of listening? You can throw it in the chat too, if that's easier. But when did you use this type of listening today? Oh,
I don't have a partner. So, but to engage, communicate, create, and share meaning and understanding, I'll say that I use that type sometime with my children.
I used it with my husband this morning. This has nothing to do with it, but I left my phone at home. And so I went for blood work this morning, and they were kind enough to let me use the phone because my husband was going to his old job to help the owner paint a generator or whatnot. And it was right down the road from where I was going to be. So I asked him, I said, I'm going to go straight there from here, and I'll pick up Lulu, our littlest daughter, from you there, whatever, whatnot, to make an understanding, because you're already there. You don't have to wait for me to drive the 20 minutes home, for you to drive all the 20 minutes down here. You can just come down here. I'll scoop her up from you, literally do the switcheroo, and I'll head back home. And I mean, obviously it's working. She just finished her bread and didn't realize
and is
it.
asking for more. Yeah, but it's that shared meaning. You've got, I can't blow this up because it's not cooperating, but you've got that shared meaning where you're trying to make those plans. This is important. We need to take care of this. We need to handle this business. There you go. Other examples. Whoops. I can tell you now that my daughter she's almost 3.5. I think September will be 3.5. So she's starting to be like a real person and have conversations and tell me stories. And so that's something now where we can stop and talk about things, and she'll tell me things and ask me questions, and I can have that conversation back and forth with her. It's a lot nicer than, just listening or hearing that baby babble that we used to be. How about empathic listening? Has anyone had to do this today? No? I have a friend who is going through a miserable breakup after, I think, 10 years with this person. And again, I admitted this is hard for me. This is not one that I do well with, but the past 3 weeks has been a lot of empathic listening and talking to this person and trying to say, you're not a horrible person. It's not you, it's them, and that whole conversation. So that's probably where I've been engaging in empathic listening a lot recently. Okay, how about analytic listening? What have you engaged in? What kind of analytic listening have you engaged in today?
Actually, so me and my cousins went for a ride today. We went to Massachusetts, but on the way we were talking about our children and the type of punishment that is given to them. And so we each have different way of parenting. But we all have come to one understanding that because we cuddle our kids too much, they tend to not do what is expected of them. So, for example, both my daughters are 16. They're going into a different tier of working for this. So they're going outside of the normal tier, which is a tier 3, but each of them chose different fields to work in. One of them chose working with elderly disabled, and the other one chose working with kids. So the argument in the car was about taking their phone, okay? And I'm like, I get it. I take their phone, I do all of that, I understand that. But they're at an age right now where I'm trying to remove myself from what they do. So as far as like people getting in contact with them to do the summer job, then providing certain information to these people and not have to go through me, because you guys are at a point, you guys did the mock interviews, you guys did all of that. So there's a point where I need to remove myself where you're able to do this. So to make a long story short, they're like, well, no, you need to take the internet. I'm like, that's a little unfair. They're doing too much. They're doing sport. They're like, no, they should be able to go to the library. That's what we mean by you cuddle them. It's not a question of cuddling. Like they have so much. The amount of time that it would take them to go to the library to do this, when this could be done at home within their environment, their computer. And I just feel like for me, that type of punishment, it's unfair.
Sure.
So
but you're trying to argue back and forth. You're trying to listen to what your cousin's saying and make your point back. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and they're like, that's why they're the way that you are. You cuddle them, you do this. And I'm like, if I'm trying to teach these young ladies how to be self-sufficient, certain things, I understand punishment is needed, but certain things, it's kind of unfair to try to take away. Like they're getting people that's emailing them, setting up their job interview, emailing them,
They
telling
need
them
this right now. Yeah.
that they need. So taking the internet or taking that away, I don't feel that's a fair punishment. So
Make it
we
harder
kept
for them.
I'm just making it harder. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and then they'll just like not want to do everything that they need to do.
Mhm.
So we kept on going back and forth. And finally I was like, you know what, we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And I threw, you guys are judgmental. Like, and then my cousin got really upset. How are we judgmental? And I'm like, okay, this is taking a whole other,
Fun.
yeah, I was like, it's taking a whole other turn. We're on quite a ride to Mass, and I'm not gonna sit here for us to be mad at each other.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? We agree to disagree.
Mhm.
And I just left it at that.
And listening to your description of that conversation, it sounds like it was getting noisy. And again, I say noisy, thinking about like other things, your cousin's frustrated or there's something else bothering her, or she doesn't like what you're saying, she doesn't agree with it. So that noise clouds
There
the
was other things
conversation.
adding on to it. And then when I said she was just like, you guys are being judgmental,
Yep.
it took another turn. And I was
Absolutely.
like, yeah, no, we're done. We're gonna agree to disagree. We're gonna leave this
Mhm.
conversation right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
so it was-
So
it
let's
was
look at
crazy.
how to listen effectively. And there are 5 different things that you have to do: reception, attention, evaluation, action. and retention. And I'm really going to focus on 3 of those, but these are just ways how to listen effectively. And as we go over, just think about it. Are you good at this? Are these things that you do well or don't do well? And I keep saying the word noise as we're chatting tonight. And that's that first part. That's a huge first part. Make sure that you have good reception. And reception really has to do with, not like, I'm going through a tunnel, like you can't hear me on the cell phone, not like that sort of thing. But that noise factor. If you are trying to listen to someone, are you mentally ready to listen to someone? Are you in that mental position where you can sit and you can focus and you can actually, be productive in that conversation? And sometimes we can, and other times, like in my household, we have this gesture. If we do this, like, whoa, I'm full, I'm almost full. That's what that means. And it's just this unspoken gesture that you got to cut it off. I can't listen to you anymore because my bucket's full. I can't listen anymore. And so the technical term, when you think about like therapy, is emotional flooding. The idea is that there's just so much going on in your brain that you're completely flooded and you can't focus on this or that or whatever, because there's so much noise and so many moving parts. And sometimes I think, especially as, again, women, and I know a significant number of us are mothers, there is so much going on that you can't listen. You've got so much else that you're balancing and focusing and thinking about that you are flooded a lot of the time. So that's the first step. If you want to listen effectively, you need to be mindful of, can you physically in this moment right now listen effectively? All right, second one is attention. Pretty simple. Again, are you really listening and paying attention, or are you not? And I think we're all guilty of sometimes just like, okay, and doing whatever else we're doing on the side. Let's see. Another one is evaluation. Again, if we are listening, how well are you evaluating what you listen? How well are you paying attention to the different sides to it, the different pieces of it? And those were the 3 that I was going to really focus on: reception, attention, evaluation, because the other 2, they're pretty much no-brainers. Like, do you take action with it, and then do you retain? Do you remember that information after the fact? So last thing that I just want to talk about really quickly are just some barriers to effective listening. And you're going to see this in the video activity this week. It is a couple driving in a car, and it's kind of a weird one where they're being filmed from behind, like the kid has a phone and is filming this conversation that they're having. And part of the questions are going to ask you, why are they not listening to each other well? What's a barrier? So some active barriers, conversational narcissism. Those are those people who keep turning the conversation back to themselves. You start talking, you start sharing how you feel, and then these people suddenly make it all about them. The second one is stage hogs. Those are people who just won't let anyone else, get a word in edgewise. They keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Next one is competitive interrupters. I think we all know what that means. You're just constantly interrupting the other person. And then the last one is ambushing. And this one's a little bit trickier, but if you're familiar with gaslighting, or if you're familiar with just manipulative behavior, which we'll be talking about in a few weeks, that's really what ambushing is. You start a conversation, and then whoever you're talking to says something that makes you stop and go, wait a minute, and you lose direction, you lose focus altogether. So that original conversation that you set out to have is just completely derailed. Passive barriers are a little bit more forgivable. The first one is pseudo listening. And with that one, again, think about a little kid who's babbling at you. A toddler hands you a play phone or something, and they go, bah, 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 like baby talk. That's pseudo listening. You're not really paying attention, but you're pretending to. Selective listening. Again, pretty obvious. Sometimes you're listening, sometimes you're not, and you're choosy about it. And then the last one, information overload. That goes back to the flooding we were talking about just a minute ago. And essentially it's that there's just so much else going on. There's so much else occupying your brain that you just can't listen effectively because it's too much. You're overloaded. All right. Any final thoughts on listening? Is anyone, I don't know, does anyone feel that they do any of these barriers? Do you see yourself in it?
Almost all of them. I'm
Oh
guilty
no.
of.
I see myself in the conversational narcissist. I see that sometimes, not all the time.
Mhm. I try, like, it's super hard because I try to be relatable with everyone. Maybe not with everything, because I'll straight up say if I'm ignorant on something or if I don't understand, I have no problem admitting I'm wrong or whatever, whatnot. But it's like, I don't know. I find myself sometimes that I'm always bringing up that I'm sick, and it annoys me. But sometimes that's the only way, because it's what I'm going through. It's
Sure.
my every single day, but it's how I relate to that person sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I feel this because of this reason, so I understand, because it's that person doesn't have cancer, but they still have that feeling. So in order for me to be like, I understand, I explain why I understand or whatever, whatnot. You know what I mean?
But in that conversation, are you completely omitting the other person? Like, are you ignoring them completely? Or are you using it as a tool? Because that's the difference there.
Oh, okay. Then I take it back.
I was about to say that. I was about to
I take it back then.
I was about to tell her, you acknowledge them, but you always refer to yourself on the way that you acknowledge them.
Oh, okay. I take it
But don't
back
we
then.
do that? I mean, if you're having a conversation with someone, especially that dialogic conversation, you're going back and forth, how do I relate best to you? Well, I can't get inside your head, right? I can't understand what you're going through, but I, as an individual, can listen to what you're saying and try to relate and try to make meaning through my own meanings.
A reference through my own. See, with conversational narcissism, I tend to do that. And that's something I've seen about myself, because I've had friends where we're having a conversation and they're literally telling me about themselves and what they're going through. And somehow, some way, I cut the conversation and the conversation turns to be about me and what I'm going through. And sometimes I catch myself doing that to my friends. And then I'll be like, anyway, this was not about me. This was about you. Continue.
Yeah.
That's when I catch myself. Yeah.
Sure. It's also very human, though. We have an innate need to be understood. We want other people to understand us. And what better way for people to understand us than for them to know, like, what we're dealing with, what's going on with us. Marzina, go ahead. What were you going to say?
First, forgive the background. I'm a little busy, but I just wanted to jump in on this part of the conversation. For me, who's an empath that we were just talking about, it's very difficult. I can speak for me. I'm sure I can speak for other empaths. Like, when you're speaking to someone and you're having a conversation, because we can feel exactly like what's going on. We know when they're lying. We know when they're being deceptive. And it's like, it's really aggravating and annoying, because especially if they're like coming to you, because, like, you know, for me, everyone likes to come to me. So when everyone comes to me, it's like, but you're not being honest. And I can feel it and I can sense it. And it's just like, I can't help a liar. Like, you understand? Because if you're not going to be honest about it, then that means you don't necessarily want the help all the way. So to effectively listen, it's like, I can't be as effective as I would like to be. So I gotta kind of play along with the lie that's being told. So, you know, to make them almost comfortable. Isn't that awful though? Like, now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds like I'm a horrible person, but it's just like, you can help them, but to a degree. And then, to be an effective listener as well, you have to, like, you kind of have to play the role, if that makes sense.
I'm going to interrupt you, Boo, because you can't be truthful with somebody who's not truthful with themselves.
With themselves.
If they're not willing,
Thank you.
if they're not
right.
willing
You are.
to admit their faults, how can you help them when they
Mhm.
cannot help
Admit,
themselves?
how can
And
you give them that
You know what I'm saying?
criticism, that
Yes,
harsh words? Yes.
absolutely. And the worst is a
Mhm.
narcissist, because when a narcissist is talking to you and you're like,
It's
you can see
everybody else's
everything,
fault. It's never
everybody
their own.
else's fault. So it's like, how do
Correct.
you know, to be as effective as I would like to be, sometimes I just say, you know what? We'll come back to this topic again. I sort of kind of switch it, or I'll try to bait them. Does that make sense? I'll bait them enough to make them start telling on themselves without them knowing they're kind of telling on themselves,
Mhm.
and then that's when I can kind of help them, if that
The
makes sense. So
harshness.
yeah,
That,
it's
with
really
me, that's where it
Some
comes to
people
harshness.
also just don't want to be helped because they get more attention from the pity
Oh,
than
yeah.
they do being
preach
whatever
You're
it is.
telling the truth.
You know what I'm saying? Because again, here I go. I could play the cancer card all day, every day, all day,
Mhm.
but I don't. I genuinely, I don't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I could have like people wanted to start GoFundMe's for me and all this other stuff, and I was like, no, like my husband has a good job. We're not losing our home. We're not doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
no.
And you do it while looking amazing. That's my court. I swear.
She's been
Thank
doing
you.
this the whole
I
time.
know.
just
I keep
saying.
looking at it because it was just done yesterday. I can't
She's
help
I
it.
was
a bad
gonna
mamma
say,
jamma, that's why.
Professor S, what Marzina
Yeah.
said, and this is sometimes where I find myself being harsh, because if I think you're lying, my response to you is gonna be, when you come to terms with what's going on and you really want the help, you really want my opinion, then come back to me. I can't give you my opinion if what you're saying to me, and you know that I know it's not truthful, I can't give you my opinion, because if I give you an honest opinion, it's gonna get me, like, this is where I'm blunt with it.
Yeah.
And whether you take the criticism, either you take it and learn from it, or you be pissed off and never speak to me.
But you
And
know,
this-
Arlick, the thing
Go ahead.
about that is, even so, whether you could be blunt in a way, like, how can I word this? I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. I'm tired. You could be blunt in a way that they still, no matter what you say, it doesn't matter. They're going to get offended, because, like Court said, when they don't want to face the truth, being an effective listener can still kind of backfire, because then they want
Correct.
you to, they'll say like, oh, I've told you all of this. Did you not hear what I said? And don't let
Correct.
it be a brother. You didn't hear what I just said. Like you that's what I was just saying to you. Like, you didn't hear me. Like they start acting all like that. Like, it's like, what?
It's like, I heard you, but there's some part of what you're saying to me that is not true. You
And
want the
this
harsh
is
reality?
your examples. Your examples are perfect, because this is exactly why I keep going back to the same slide. It really is, because everything you're describing has to go back to that emotional flooding. It really does, that noise. You know, someone's lying to you, someone's not being truthful, or they're getting confused with the fact that you're listening versus you're not listening.
Not listening.
That's that noise. That's that noise. And I think we as listeners just need to be so mindful of when there's too much noise for us, you know?
Well, that's where the what is it
Got
called? Healthy barriers come into play.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah. And
it.
that
I'm learning
is
that. I'm learning that.
listening. That too is listening. I mentioned a few minutes ago, my friend going through this horrible breakup. I love this friend desperately. I do, right? She should have broken up with this person 10 years ago. And it's dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And now the person has decided it's over and wants nothing to do with her. And it's like, oh my God, we finally listened to what we saw years ago. But she's so distraught that she keeps texting, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Can I come over? What are you doing? And it's at a point where in my household, we're like, we can't right now. We can't. So, you know, we'll talk and we'll text and we'll hang out one day, but then we need like 4 or 5 days off, because we can't.
She's so emotionally distraught
Yeah.
that she's not realizing that this is something that should have happened years ago. Now
Right,
that it
right.
happened, you need to take time to figure out what you want, but you're so
And that's-
concerned about the emotional hurt that
Yeah.
you're feeling, nothing else matters.
Yep. And that's okay. And that's a journey that she's going through. That's
Mhm.
fine. I wish her luck on the journey. But with the listening piece, I can't, and even my husband, who is an empath, right? We can't listen that much because it's draining. We can't actively listen and do our friend a good service because there's so much noise and there's so much emotional flooding. So we have to take time off and we have to say, okay, well, she texted today, Friday's a good day. We'll do something Friday. And then we'll wait until next Wednesday, you know? And so to your point, Marzina, you know, as you're talking to different people, as you're empathetic and you're listening to other people and their messages, you too probably reach a point where it's too much and you need a break and you need to turn it off. And even someone who's not an empath, right here, not an empath at all. My husband reminds me every day, and he's totally right. I'm not an empath, right? But even for people who are not empaths, like it gets hard. Listening is hard and emotional and noisy. And so we all need to stop and disconnect and give ourselves a break sometimes. And that can be TV or a glass of wine or whatever, a nap, but we all need to step back and take that time.
Yeah, I think that emotional flooding is hard for other people to accept that it's happening.
Absolutely.
So like, for instance, like if I'm talking to my best friend not too long ago told me that I was a horrible best friend because I'm not communicating enough. I'm not taking time aside for my friendship. I've kind of just left it in the doldrums. And, you know, if I'm not showing active effort towards a friendship, how can I be a best friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the minute he started talking, I did one of those where I wasn't interested because I was already emotionally flooded with everything else that's going on in my life, that it was just like, he started talking, it was like, oh, you're calling me out on something but there was this emotional flooding. I didn't have a room. Did I care about what he was feeling? Absolutely. Did I care that he thought that I was a horrible friend? Absolutely. But I didn't have room to care at that time.
Because you have so much to deal with.
So as he's talking, I'm just kind of like, So when I get into that emotional flooding, I think my friends know because I become very passive. So I'm mostly someone that if I did have room for that argument or for that discussion, I would have all these rebuttals like, oh, well, you know, this happened and this is why I didn't call you then. And that's why I didn't respond back. And that's why I said 15 times this week that I would call you back and I didn't. Like, I would have room to explain that. But when I get into that emotional flooding where it's just nothing fits in the plate, I'm just kind of just like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, I'll try my best to, you know, do better next week. Like, and that's just where I go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming emotionally disconnected.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I think it was even a threat of like, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. I'm like, okay, sorry. Let's try again next week. Like,
disconnecting, it's not pretty, it's ugly, but it's also a self-preservation thing. And sometimes you need to be realistic that you need to disconnect. Amber, we haven't heard anything from you. You want to jump in, Jasmine? We've been like,
I think the only time I get annoyed with listening is if someone like repeats what they've said a million times. So
yes.
But other than that, I think I'm a pretty decent listener.
That's good. I totally agree with you. Tell me the same thing 15 times and I'm gonna lose my mind. I swear to God.
So Amanda, I mean Amber is saying that. So in other words, you're telling me my kids, because I repeat myself to them so many times, so they did just become like, okay, you're not listening to her anymore. Because sometimes I feel that's what my kids do to me. Because I'm like, if I tell you something and you did it when I told you to do it, it wouldn't take me to repeat it again. So basically repeating it, keep repeating it. They're just like, all right, we're done with this.
Well, I think it depends on the context. So like, I understand what you're saying. If I'm repeating something and someone isn't listening to me, then I'll get frustrated. But like, if like your friend is going through a breakup and she's saying like, I'm sad, I think that can get like exhausting.
Repetitive, like, yeah, very exhausting. Like, okay,
Arlie, I don't mean to call you out, but in the beginning of this class, you said, and, you know, as parents, right, we're so notorious at this, at expecting our children to be something we're not, right? Mm-hmm. So in the beginning of this class, you said, when I am not interested in hearing what somebody got to say, I block them out and I no longer listen. So what you're telling the kids to do, they ain't trying to listen to it. So they're blocking you out. Just a little info on what's going on.
Absolutely, we do. We totally do that. And that's part of what's so frustrating about having kids, is because you see them, like you see yourself in them. They're doing the things that you don't want to do, but you do. And yeah, absolutely. I'm looking really quickly for, that's psychosocial development, just stages of development with kids, to think about it.
Like PAs, like
Piaget. I'm
Yeah.
looking at Erickson at the
never say
moment.
his name
Piaget
right.
might be better.
but yeah, my daughter, my 6-year-old lost her first tooth last week.
Mhm.
I am still hearing the same story
Yeah.
since last Monday. I'm like, babe, I know. I
was
know the tooth
there.
fairy gave you a glittery, sparkly $5 bill, a receipt, and a note.
Wow.
Oh yes, she did. You know what I mean? I may not be mother of the year, but
But there's a
those
good
little-
tooth fairy.
those little terrace comes first. You know what I mean? So,
It's not so much Piaget.
yeah, and now it's growing back. The adult tooth is already there. Whoa,
Wait, that happens?
calm down, right?
Yep.
Calm down. You're 6, not 16. Calm down.
And I think that's where it gets hard too, is because we know these things. You know, this is a no-brainer for us. Do you know that Santa Claus comes and he comes down the chimney, and he comes down that chimney in the next room?
no idea.
Yes, I do.
Where have I been?
And we did the same
Duh.
thing.
Exactly.
We did the same thing when we were kids too. With kids and the listening thing, it looks like we lost our lease. With kids and the listening thing, you got to just remember that they're going through so much. I'm not finding a chart that really, for me, best explains what they're going through. But you think about just the mental load and the emotional load, and the fact that they're growing and changing, and oh my God, what's going on down there? Like that sort of thing, right? There's so much else going on that, how do you blame them? You want
And with
to.
this past year, bless
Yes.
them, man.
Absolutely.
Like they are relentless. I gave my daughter, I like to give my kids choices to an extent. You know what I mean? So I was prepared to keep her home if she didn't feel safe, and we were going to do the online whatever. She's in kindergarten, so it's not like she was missing her senior year of high school. So I said, would you like to go to school? If you have to go to school, these are your guidelines. This is what you have to do. So she wanted to go to school, wear a mask, whatever. But it's like, I want them to be able to make their own decisions and know that I will support their decisions to an extent. Like if they're not feeling well, you're going to the doctors. You don't want to, don't care. You're going. But to an extent, I want them to feel confident in making their own decisions and doing that and saying, my mom will stand by me. And this year super helped with that, because it was, this is how it is. What would you like to do? And stuff like that. And it was.
And that's the same analytical listening and decision making that Arlise was talking about before. It really is. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. We can keep going all night with this.
I
Arlise,
wanted
you
to
wanna say one more
apologize
thing?
for,
I saw
sorry,
you jumped about.
Christina.
I just texted you back.
The conversation was getting so good, and I was telling her, do you